It was a battle of aces tonight at T-Mobile Park, but while Shane Bieber was really good, Luis Castillo had yet another disappointing showing. Ben Ranieri of Sea Level and I will discuss it all coming up here on the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Let's sail.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. This is Tiding Us Awesome. Ben Ranieri for the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Thank you so much for making us your first listen after the Mariners 5-2 loss to the Cleveland Guardians. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. So Colby was at the game tonight, so I'm here with Ben. Be sure to check out Sea Level. That's Ben's Substack. Ben, let's start with Luis Castillo tonight. He looked awesome through the first 3 or so innings and nearly got out of the fourth unscathed, but of course loses a 2-strike count to Will Brennan. Haniger boots the ball, allowing Jose Ramirez to score. And then right after that, Castillo gives up the 2-run home run to Bo Naylor. And for a little while after that, his command was shot. Had a really hard time throwing strikes. And when he did, he was catching a lot of plate. Got it under control a little bit there towards the end, but the damage had already been done. Final line tonight: 4 runs on 10 hits and a walk, 7 strikeouts, and 5 2/3 innings pitched. Yet another start in which the Mariners ace did not give his team necessarily the best chance to win. What did you think happened to Luis tonight, and what do you think is going on with him in general? Because this, of course, dates back to the end of last year as well.
Yeah, he was really sharp at the beginning of the game, obviously, and then I don't know. I don't know if it's that when he goes into the stretch a little bit, he loses it. But when he has to consistently pitch out of the stretch, sometimes he loses command a little bit. And it's basically the same story whenever Luis Castillo struggles. It's that he spins his slider right in the middle of the plate. I know it's a fastball that was the homer, I believe. But he'll spin fastballs in the middle, or spin sliders in the middle of the plate. And his command is just not great. Basically, that whole inning was just at the belt or below, and they really got away from calling fastballs in that inning. It was just bad command of his off-speed stuff, and it got hit hard, mostly by the Guardians' left-handed hitters, and the Guardians they continue to be kind of that annoying, pesky offense. So I don't know. It could be a lot of different things. I saw him actually get frustrated, like visibly frustrated tonight, which you just don't see very often from him. So obviously he's frustrated. Like you said, it's been dating back to last year. It's like 4 bad outings in a row or so for Castillo. So I'm not that worried about it ultimately. I think I've seen a stat where his ERA goes down as the weather gets warmer. So maybe it's just a little bit of cold weather and just a little bit of kind of feeling out here in the early season.
Now, this wasn't just a Luis problem tonight. The defense was also pretty sloppy. A couple misplays by Josh Rojas. Obviously, the booted ball by Haniger. Are you getting concerned about this Mariners defense? This was obviously a pretty big question mark heading into the season, and it's already kind of reared its ugly head here in the early going.
Yeah, it's a little bit concerning, especially when they don't have guys like Brash and Santos and stuff like that. They can get a little bit of swing and miss because they don't necessarily. I know the bullpen was good tonight, but they don't necessarily have as much swing and miss as they would normally have. So it is a little bit concerning. Third base has been the major issue. I don't think Polanco's looked terrible at second, but obviously, like Mitch, that was kind of an uncharacteristic mistake by him. He's not. When I think of Mitch Haniger, like he's a pretty technically sound outfielder. He's just kind of lost the speed and the range and stuff like that. And so that I'm not terribly worried about Mitch booting balls all the time in the outfield. But the third base thing is definitely concerning. Going from what they've had over there the last, 10 years or so, and Kyle Seager and Gino Suarez, to what they have right now. I don't think Josh Rojas is as bad as he's been. I don't think he's that bad, but the Luis Urias stuff is concerning, especially the throwing stuff. Hopefully Perry Hill and those guys can get stuff ironed out so they can at least just be like, we're not asking for all-star level defense over there. You just need them to be not a giant issue. But yeah.
When do you think we get to a point where they might try Blanco there and move Rojas and Urias over to second?
It's possible. I mean, I think when you're talking about that, it's more of like Polanco's a veteran player, and obviously, like, he hasn't been super great at the plate so far either. But if that's something that he's not comfortable with, I don't think you're going to make it. I don't think you want to make potentially the offensive part of things worse, because it is different footwork. Second base is different footwork than third base. Like, playing on the right side is much different than playing on the left side. And so if that's not something that Polanco's comfortable with, like, I don't think that that's necessarily the smartest thing to do that. I mean, if he's open to it and he wants to help the team out that way, I don't think it's a bad idea. It's something that I think it's probably their best defensive alignment to do it that way. But then again, you're asking Polanco to do something that you don't know if he's totally comfortable with, and you acquired him for his bat. So that's the important thing there. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they attack this moving forward.
So dating back to September, the earned runs per start for Luis Castillo, 4.44, 5.220.5. Not a great stretch here for Castillo. And right now, of course, with the struggles that the Mariners offense is also going through, the margin for error is pretty slim with this team right now, especially against a really good starting pitcher in Shane Bieber, who, they had some doubles tonight. They had some hard hit balls, but they just couldn't really string together hits and ultimately push runs across the plate. We're going to talk about that some more in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners postgame show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV as soon as possible. Fire TV also recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, from March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. And if you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Thank you again for making us your first listen after the Mariners 5-2 loss to the Cleveland Guardians. And just a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So, as we were talking about just a moment ago, Ben, Mariners offense were able to put together some hits against Shane Bieber. They had 3 doubles from Mitch Haniger, Mitch Garver, and Ty France, but they just weren't able to push any runs across the plate against Bieber. They were finally able to get some action going against Eli Morgan in this Cleveland Guardians bullpen, but only a couple runs. They weren't able to dig themselves out of the hole that Castillo and company created. So instead of just hyper focusing on tonight's offensive performance, because it was very similar to some of the other offensive performances we've seen, I just want to get your general thoughts on the offense now that we have basically a full week's worth of games at this point.
Yeah, I think on tonight, like one part about tonight is that Shane Bieber is just really, really good. He had 7 whiffs on his slider, and it's kind of just the theme of this season so far has kind of been this spin to win thing, and teams are just spinning the Mariners to death, and they haven't so far responded. This is probably not the answer that people want to hear, but it definitely seems like they're pressing. And I don't know if that's them putting pressure on getting off to a fast start, or really what it is. But overall, like one thing that I think we can feel pretty good about is like there's a lot of guys that are really good hitters, and we've seen be really good hitters that just haven't really done anything yet. I mean, JP Crawford had the home run on Friday or whenever that was, but he's been struggling a little bit. Like Cal Raleigh kind of got going again tonight, but he's been struggling. It's guys that we've seen do it in Seattle that have struggled a little bit already to start. And Mitch Garver was obviously out. He looked okay tonight. He hit the double, but there's been a couple guys that have been swinging it pretty well. Mitch Haniger and Ty France, I think, are 2 guys that's encouraging to see at least. But overall, it just looks like guys are really pressing and, I don't know, getting out of their approach a little bit. Ultimately, it hasn't even been so much a chase issue, really. It's just hit the pitches in the middle of the plate. Like, don't put so much pressure on yourself and just have a little swag and go out there and do it. They got a chance to go win a series tomorrow, which is really all you can ask for at the end of the day. But just looks like a bunch of guys that are pressing and trying really, really hard. And in baseball, that's the one sport where I think Gary Hill said this when I talked to him the other day. It's the one sport where trying harder probably makes you worse most of the time. So
one positive that I think we can take away from these first few games, and especially tonight, is that it's starting to look like Driveline Ty France might be real, which I know is a pretty big deal for you because, of course, you have been very involved in that storyline, talking to Tanner Stokey from Driveline, of course, on your show. And you came on the show a few weeks back and talked a little bit about, just your assessment of Ty and where he was at in spring training. Now, what is your assessment so far of Ty through the first week here of the regular season?
Well, one thing that's super encouraging already is that, so when you make bat speed adjustments and stuff like that, it doesn't necessarily mean that stuff's going to translate to the game. It doesn't always, the bat speed doesn't always translate fully, or sometimes not even really at all. The swing has to sequence correctly to be able to translate to the game. It took JP Crawford a little while into the season last year to kind of figure out how to organize the swing, get the ball in the air. So far, kind of the way that I put it is that we're kind of almost seeing a supercharged version of old Ty France. Like, he's just hitting the ball really hard. He's still hitting the ball on the ground a lot, but he's hitting the ball really hard and in a similar manner to how he was hitting it in 2021 and the beginning of 2022. So he's not hitting the ball in the air to his pull side yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's coming. I think he's starting to get a little bit more confident. He looks way better than at any point last year, in my opinion. So it's really exciting. He's hitting the ball harder than he's hit it basically ever, which is a really good sign. And obviously almost hit one out to right center tonight on a kind of windy and cold night, it seemed like, in Seattle. So there's a lot of stuff to be excited about. I'm not going to say he's back yet, but it's looking pretty good so far.
Yeah, no, he's looked really good. And I think the most impressive thing, I know he's hitting the ball really hard, but also just like some opposite field singles, not doing too much with the ball, just dropping the barrel on the ball and seeing what happens. I've been very impressed with just that aspect of Ty France's game the past week. So hoping we get to see more of that, as well as seeing what, some of this power can result in eventually. So we're going to step away from tonight's loss and talk a little bit about some minor Mariners news. The Mariners made a couple of, they made one minor league signing. They claimed a guy off of waivers. They also lost someone on waivers. We're going to go over that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners postgame show is brought to you by FanDuel. The sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action, because right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on the tourney, MLB, NBA, NHL, and so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on. That's LOCKDON, and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Thank you again for making us your first listen after the Mariners 5-2 loss to the Cleveland Guardians. And I'm still a little sick, so if I'm talking a little low right now, I apologize. I'm getting over it, folks. I'm getting there. I'm rounding third and heading home, but I'm not there yet. By the way, we are going to be doing another post game show tomorrow afternoon after the series finale between the Mariners and the Guardians. Colby's going to be back with me for that, and I want to thank Ben, of course, for hopping on here tonight, because Colby, of course, had to selfishly go to the ball game tonight and get his no-fly zone bobblehead, of course, and watch that ball game tonight. So I'm sure he had.
I'm sure he's thrilled about it.
Yeah, he was. I'm sure he's so stoked to drive back to Yakima right now after that. So, yeah. All right, so let's get into some minor Mariners news. The first thing here that came out today, we were waiting on this for a while now. Taylor Trammell has been claimed off of waivers officially by the Los Angeles Dodgers. Kind of weird that they, of all teams, are the ones that end up with Trammell, and that they, of all teams, are willing to give Trammell a shot on their 26-man roster. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I kind of always thought and kind of hoped that it would be like, well, the Rockies are a terrible organization, but I kind of hoped that he would just go to the Rockies and hit like 40 bombs there. But like, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm interested to see like what they have planned for him. I don't know if they have like an injury or something, or how they even fit him on that roster. But that's very interesting. I'm hoping for the best for Taylor. He's an awesome dude. I've heard nothing but great things, and in the little time that I've got to be around him, I've seen nothing but great things. He's an 80 grade human being, and I hope he absolutely kills it. This is not somebody that I hope that Mariners Twitter is rooting for to fail. I hope he has an awesome time there. But yeah, it's certainly interesting. The Dodgers could fit him onto their 26-man.
Yeah, very fascinating. But like you said, big Taylor Trammell fan, always will be. Hoping nothing but the best for him. I don't know if it's the best fit for him in terms of getting playing time, obviously, because it's the Dodgers. It's one of the best clubs in baseball. But on the flip side, it's one of the best clubs in baseball. It's a pretty good spot for him to land and, hopefully revive his career. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that it wasn't like the Tigers or the A's or the Rockies or someone like that, that no one in that kind of realm was willing to give him a shot. Secondly, here, the Mariners claimed a reliever off of waivers today from the Chicago White Sox, Sammy Peralta, lefty with a funky delivery, funky arm slot. What do you think about him?
Yeah, he's kind of like a low arm slot. Another one of those guys, but he's from the left side, which is kind of interesting. He was actually pretty good last year. That was my first takeaway when I looked at him. Was I was shocked at, I think he threw 20 innings last year, but he had like a 4 ERA, like totally fine. I was shocked that the White Sox, of all teams, they might be the worst team in baseball. And they didn't have room for him. That was kind of shocking. But he's not a hard thrower. He's like 89, 90 with a fastball. But this seems like the classic case of a guy who's got a really good sweeper potentially that just needs to throw it more often. But he got good results on it last year and got good results at the major league level last year. So kind of surprised, and this might be kind of a really interesting pickup for the Mariners. Maybe like a left-handed version of Tyson Miller. Maybe kind of something similar to that. So I think it's interesting. And the 40 man's now at 39 players. So they have some room. So maybe he'll be able to stick on there for a while and see what he can kind of do down in Tacoma.
Yeah, we'll see what they're able to do with him. Finally, babe, wake up. The new Tommy Malone just dropped. And it's someone that I didn't expect was ever going to be a Seattle Mariner. Dallas Keuchel, former Cy Young Award winner, former Astros pitcher. I'm sure we're all very familiar with. I'm sure we all remember the Keuchel's Corner, which was totally not a copy of the King's Court, but whatever, we'll let bygones be bygones. He was most recently with the Minnesota Twins. The last 3 years of his career have not been particularly good. He's dealt with some injuries, of course, but he's depth and arguably some much needed starting depth for this organization. So what do you think about taking a flyer on Dallas Keuchel out of nowhere, seemingly? Hey,
we've been asking for starting pitching depth, and
there we go. I guess
he's a starting pitcher. He hasn't really been very good since 2020. I know and people are probably tired of me talking about this, but he's been a driveline along with Shane Bieber this last offseason. And so, who knows? Maybe he's found a little something that can. I'm not saying he's going to return to Cy Young. That pitcher is obviously gone, but maybe he can be somewhat like a swing guy or a number 5 type starter. I think it's a worthy flyer. It's a minor league deal, right? There's no risk on that. And you never know. Maybe the Mariners pitching lab can kind of help him throw one of his pitches more often and get him to be kind of a serviceable starter down in Tacoma. So with a minor league deal, there's no bad minor league deal. And for a team that sorely kind of needs some pitching depth, I think it's a nice little interesting ad.
Like Colby and I always say, and like you just said, there is no such thing as a bad minor league deal unless the player has off the field issues. So we'll see. The Mariners needed starting depth, some veteran starting depth, some guys that have been there and done that. Again, I would have taken Tommy Malone had it been Tommy Malone. Like, just literally give me someone that has some major league starts within the last couple of years, and I'll take it. So yeah,
unless Logan Evans is that starting pitching depth.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that real quick. Right, let's talk about that. Logan Evans is starting the year in Double-A.
Yeah,
this is a guy that, again, I think a lot of us only found out about. I think some of us were aware of the fact that they drafted him this past year, but actually became aware of him and the hype around him that this organization has only a few weeks ago. Now this guy is again starting in Double-A. What do you think about that?
I've heard nothing but great things about this
amazing things
from people. Obviously Jerry on your guys' show, and then just talking to people, I think stuff wise, they think this guy's and obviously has to translate out on the field. I would like to preface this by saying that, but I think they think he's one of the best arms on the planet stuff wise, and what he can do on the backfields. Yeah, it's super interesting. I don't know if you saw the Jeff Passan interview today, but he had somebody, text him and be like, "Do you know who Logan Evans is?" And he's like, "No, should I?" And they're like, "Yes." This guy is pretty legit. And the biggest takeaway to me is if they're putting him in Arkansas this year, when you're in Arkansas as a pitcher, that means you're a call away. So that's insane to me. But Logan Evans might be able to make his big league debut this year. Now, I'm not expecting that or anything like that, but it's crazy. But if they think his stuff is there, he's an older, right? He was a college draftee.
Yeah.
So I don't know. it's something to think about. He's a call away. He's at Arkansas, so he's technically a call away. We'll see how he does. But
yeah, when I saw that, I was like, do they think he can pitch out of the bullpen this year? Because that, and maybe he is part of the starting depth. Who knows?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
That's
again, like the first that I really heard like hype around him was Keith Law's top 25 or top 20 Mariners prospects or whatever he did on The Athletic a couple of months ago. He had him like 14. I was like, I've literally never heard anyone talk about Logan Evans like that. Like, where is that coming from? And then Jerry said what he said on our show. And then, you're hearing Jeff Passan talk about him now, and you're hearing some other people talk about him. And then, you and I have talked about that a little bit as well.
In hindsight, I wish I would have done more digging because I didn't have him in my top 20. Hand up. Like, I didn't have him in my top 20, but I didn't do any digging on him. I just kind of wrote him off early in the process. And
I think I had him 28. I think I had him 28 in my top 30. I don't know if he cracked our overall top 30 here on the show. He might have. But like I don't think anyone could have expected the hype that's been built here for Logan Evans. But dude's starting in Double-A, and we'll see what that means for the rest of his year. And we'll certainly be keeping an eye on him with the Travelers down there. So, all right, that is going to do it for our show. Thank you again, Ben, for hopping on here while Colby's away. Appreciate
absolutely. It. Thanks for having me.
Before we get out of here, once again, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Once again, check out Ben's Substack, clevel.com. Got that right?
C-level BR.
clevelbr.com. I always mess that up. Check it out though. It's great stuff over there. Ben just did an interview with Gary Hill Jr., friend of our show as well. Love Gary. Got to get Gary back on our show as well.
Yeah, he's the man.
Yeah, he's great. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Ben Ranieri, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Ben at Ben Ranieri 10. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen after the Mariners 5-2 loss to the Cleveland Guardians. Have yourself a beautiful baseball evening. We'll see you next time. Peace.